Welcome everyone back to our teaching, listening and speaking. We've been together for a couple weeks already for online content and I wish everyone stay safe, stay cool. Last time we talked about top-down and bottom-up processes already 2 เทปนั้น For those who haven't checked the previous videos, go back and check those one first. For those who have already watched it, you probably get some questions and that's normal อาจารย์ดีใจมากถ้าเราจะมีคำถาม because the previous classes online that we talked about top-down and bottom-up, they were mostly about theories. But in this time, we will focus on more how that we can combine top-down and bottom-up together. Should we go for just top-down or should we go just for a bottom-up, or how can we mix them? Before I started, I would like to make sure that everyone have the slides on hand. In the first slides, you will see that this is all the review for our for the both contents online that we made. It summarized that students who need to use both top-down and bottom-up processes anyway in real life. It is very important for us as teachers to provide them chance to practice both top-down and bottom-up process. Before we can answer the question that how can we put top-down and bottom-up process into our lesson plan, one thing that we really need to know as EFL teachers เป็นสิ่งที่พลาดไม่ได้เลยทีเดียว You need to understand what kind of lesson plan that we can have in terms of listening. The structure of listening lesson plan. Now, it's not fixed, it is very flexible. You need 3 main stages: pre-listening, while listening and post-listening. And now you also know that it's your privilege to organize whether you would like to put top-down or bottom-up process in pre-listening, while and post-listening. And when you choose the different process, it means the activities will also be different as well. In listening lesson plan, it is normally divided into 3 main parts, which are the first one, pre-listening. คำว่า pre ใช่ไหมก็คือ it's the process that you prepare, you get your students ready for the listening while listening ระหว่างที่ฟัง we are teaching listening, so one thing that can be missed is let them listen, so while listening process. And the last process or the last stage of the last process of the listening lesson plan, it is the post-listening process. So after you let them to listen to the content, it comes to the last stage that you need to provide some activities for them after listening. I would like to show you some examples. So when you know that there are 3 steps or 3 stages of listening before you listen, while listen, and post after you listen. It's your choice, it's your responsibility อาจารย์เรียกว่าเป็น it's your privilege to design according to these 3 process. In each process, would you like to put top down or bottom up process? Put a trap อาจารย์เรียกว่าเป็นการวางกับดักให้ learners ละกัน I have one example of the lesson plan on listening. This is what we call traditional lesson plan. You may feel very familiar with it. อาจารย์ได้ออกแบบโมเดลลูกชิ้นมา You will see the meatball models here, which includes pre-listening, while listening, and post-listening process. So normally when we teach listening in traditional lesson plan, in pre-listening ก็คือก่อนเราจะเริ่มฟังคอนเทนต์ทั้งหมดเลย Pre-listening, if you decide to use bottom-up and top-down, for example, in some traditional classroom,they use the bottom up first เริ่มจากการใช้ดักให้เด็กได้ลองใช้ bottom up process. Bottom up แปลว่า you don't need any background knowledge from home. It means like they can acquire new knowledge from the content that they will listen. So if you วางกับดัก if you put the trap for your student to practice using bottom up process, in the pre-listening, review key vocabularies and introducing sounds. สอนก่อนเลย I would like them to listen to one song to practice the verb sounds, and then the song that I turn on for them is what does the fox say? So I probably teach them the meaning of each word before I let them hear and how to pronounce it correctly before I let them to listen to the song, because the students don't need any background knowledge from her. But if you decide to use top-down process, provide them the understanding. For example, if your student is Chinese, and then you would like to put the trap for them to use top-down process, you probably use the content of listening about Chinese culture. อาจจะใช้เป็นเรื่องที่เขารู้จักอยู่แล้ว Chinese food. history of Chinese, so they have some knowledge background. They are able to use that cognition to assume what is the text about. We move to the while listening process. It's a half responsibility between you and your learners. For example, you are the one deciding the kind of questions that you would like them to answer or what kind of information that you would like them to catch. For example, you may choose whether you would like them to listen for specific details or if you would like them to listen for the comprehension. For example, if you would like them to listen for specific details, you probably ask them how many verb sounds, how many times you hear verb. ได้ยินเสียง verb กี่ครั้ง What color, which date เป็น all small details. But if you would like to let them to hear for the comprehension, you probably ask them what could be the topic of this content that you just hear. What should happen next เกิดอะไรขึ้น You see, so when you use top down and bottom up in while listening, the outcome and the way of planning the lesson is also different. So we move to the last process, which is post-listening process. After you let them hear on the content, it comes to the last part that you can talk to them. You can analyze whether they understand the text or not. If you would like to use top-down process, in this part, you probably ask them to respond to the comprehension. But if you would like them to use their bottom-up process to answer the question, the kind of question for the post-listening process is probably be examining text details, examine the grammar structure เป็นเรื่อง detail ไป Now it may lead us to the next question after we know the structure แล้วก็คือ what kind of content that we should use for our listening process. It's also your privilege to choose เป็นหน้าที่ของเราเหมือนกันที่จะได้เลือก content ให้นักศึกษาฟัง So the question that I would like to highlight here is what make a good listening content. So in the whole world content ในโลกนี้มีประมาณ800 ล้านแบบ We have thousands millions of the listening content, but it can be grouped in just two main types, which are authentic and pedagogic. In terms of authentic content in listening, authentic แปลว่าแท้ 100% authentic แท้แน่นอน and another one pedagogy, right? It's an ideal. So the differences between authentic and pedagogic content is that in authentic content, it is made of real conversations, but the pedagogic content, it is script เป็นสิ่งที่สร้างมาวางแผนมาเป็นมายา From the slides, you will see that I have the table to compare the differences between authentic and pedagogic content. I would like to start from the authentic content. You will see that in authentic content, the first one, as it real เป็นเรื่องจริง it's a real conversation that happens every day in real life. So there's some pros and cons มีทั้งข้อดีแล้วก็ข้อเสีย The features of authentic content is that there are overlaps and interruptions between speaker. We find incomplete sentence, false starts and hesitations. In some cases of authentic content มันจะมีแบบหนึ่งที่ it is not recorded, it's live เป็นปัจจุบันทันด่วนอย่างเช่น you bring the students to listen for the real discussions among two parties of elections อย่างเงี้ย so one thing that you will need to ทำใจ or one thing that you need to understand is that in authentic content you cannot control people's ideas. Let's move to the pedagogic content. We are a little bit different because the written overlap ไม่ค่อย overlap กันเท่าไหร่ more like written language because in the script you have already written the script before. There's probably no background noise on pedagogic สบายใจมาก because it's a record and then you can choose the best quality content. It is about โลกมายา It is an ideal conversation. It is not real, but it is an ideal version. No false start, no hesitation, no overlaps. In the next two slides, you will see an example of authentic content and pedagogic content. I will let you guys now pause my video and trying to ออกเสียงในสิ่งที่เราอ่านไป I can't say that which one is better than which one, but you know the best whether the authentic content or pedagogic content matches with your learners the most. If your learners is in the beginning level, if you let them to listen to the authentic conversation with false start slangs and the speed that you cannot control ไปเลย and then less passion in learning. It is impossible to just let them hear an ideal conversation without practicing the real life conversation. Because we know that one day they will need to use it outside the classroom. They won't be sitting in our classroom forever. Whichever kind of content that you select, please make sure that it is under the two main characteristics of good listening text. The first one, content, and the second one, delivery. In terms of content, there are 5 criteria for us to think about. The first one, interest. You need to make sure that it matches with students' interest. If you teach Thai EFL learners and then you provide the content of the process of making nitrogen, the interest doesn't match each other. The next one is about cultural accessibility. Once again, listening and speaking, it's about identity. So it is very important for EFL teachers to understand the culture. Next one is about speech act and discourse structure. As we know that when we say something, we normally want to convey some meaning. So listening is not just like let them hear sound, but it's also about let them to understand hidden meaning as well. Next one is a density. I would like to highlight here that the word density is about how hard it is. So you need to know your learner's profile. You need to know who are they, so that you can provide the content, the listening text to match their ability or their level, or a little bit beyond or a little bit easier. Don't jump too high. It won't work. That density is about how much you let them hear. มากไปก็ไม่ดีน้อยไปก็ไม่ดี so เดินทางสายกลาง balance is very important. Now we would like to move to the delivery. เป็นเรื่องของการสื่อสารบ้าง There are also 5 criteria that we need to think about in delivery. The first one, length, ความยาว The listening text, if it's too short, your student won't be able to ตกตะกอน yet. They're not able to comprehend anything at all yet. But if it's also too long, they will lose intention, they will lose interest, they will lose the track. Next one, quality of reading. You probably get confused at this point. อาจารย์ we are doing listening. What is it about reading? When you need to provide the listening content, one thing that I would like to suggest is that please always try to transcribe it in the written version first, so you can make sure that every single part is listenable. ว่ามันฟังออกว่ามันฟังได้ Next one, speed. Make sure that it's not too slow and it's not too fast. Or in some case, if you would like them in the beginning level, slow is important. อาจจะ slower than the reality. That's alright. But if they're expert learners already, if the text is too slow, it won't work. Another criteria that we need to think about is the numbers of the speaker, because we know that the characteristic of listening text is that we won't see เราไม่รู้เราไม่เห็น right? If we have a group of discussion, 10 people talking to each other, students will need to spend time to focus on matching voice of the speaker. It will disturb their listening process. And also an accent. An accent here doesn't mean that you need to choose whether American accent or British accent. It's also your privilege to think about the culture. ลิงก์ไปกับอันแรกเนาะว่า who are there, who are the listener. I probably provide Indian accent. That's alright. It doesn't matter that it have to be Western English. It can be any kind of English that you think it is listenable. เป็นสิ่งที่ฟังออก and it is very important for your learners to understand.